Welcome everyone to Monday Morning Morons for January 8th, 2018. This week, oh boy, if you thought these feminists and social justice warriors couldn't sink any lower before, well, you were wrong. Pro-abortion student endorses murdering 2-year-olds. A student at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville recently advocated aborting children up to 2 years old, citing their inability to communicate as justification. Okay, first, right off the top, you can tell we're dealing with a true genius. Killing 2-year-olds is not abortion. It's called infanticide. Words have definitions, and we're going to see this guy do it again later. In his effort to sound smart, he's going to keep misusing words he clearly doesn't know. Like this. The student made the argument during a December interview with Brianna Lewis, a field coordinator for Students for Life. In footage of the exchange, which Students for Life released this morning, the student compares 2-year-old children to trees, asserting that both lack the ability to speak. The fact of the matter is, without communication, we have no way of knowing if you're sentient or not, the young man tells Lewis. It's not different from this tree, he says, gesturing to one nearby. It's alive, but is it sentient? Sentient. Ability to perceive or feel things. A 2-year-old does not need the ability to tell me they feel things for me to be able to determine that it does. Cats don't speak either, but you can sure as hell tell it hurts when you step on their tail. Methinks you have no idea what sentient actually means. In response to this, Lewis suggests that to compare killing the tree with a 2-year-old is kinda tough. Hearing this, the young man doubles down. Can the 2-year-old talk to me, he asks. Generally speaking, the child still has the inability to communicate. And until we determine that, as such, at what point does sentience become an issue, we can't really debate whether or not abortion is permissible, he argues. Now, I've heard this sort of question from pro-choice people before, and I admit it's an interesting question in scientific terms, but obviously this guy doesn't understand the question at all. The question they're asking is something like this. In general terms, we know that a baby comes out sentient. Yes, you blubbering buffoon, newborn infants are sentient. We also know that it doesn't start that way. An egg cell is clearly not sentient. So then there must be some point after fertilization that it becomes so. The question is, where exactly is that point? Now, there's going to be any number of arguments on either side of this question, and we're not going to get into any of that here because, for this guy, we don't need to. He clearly has overstepped the bounds of that particular question and wandered off into loony territory. The shocking video sadly represents the mainstream of the pro-choice movement, she asserted. This is the one part where I would quibble with the interviewer. I don't think you can make that assertion based on this drooling idiot. The pro-choice people I know wouldn't agree with this crap either. He's an extreme. I don't think he's representative of the mainstream opinion. Not that the supposedly academic extremists are much better, mind you. Sociologist calls for more abortion-based comedy. So, Nazi jokes and parodies of identity politics are inappropriate because we're somehow normalizing genocide and white supremacy and bigotry and yada yada yada. But we can totally make jokes about murdering unborn children. Nothing offensive about that. Not only is that somehow funny, but she goes on to argue, the inclusion of abortion stories on shows other than dramas will only increase the diversity of real and inspired stories that are told, expanding our culture's idea of appropriate ways to experience and share a full range of reproductive choices, she contends. So we should normalize it. Come on, everyone, kill your babies! It's hilarious! Honestly, I'm not even sure how to deal with this one. Do I laugh at the absurd notion that jokes magically make things normal, or do I feel sorry for this apparently soulless harpy who thinks there's something humorous about killing babies? How about instead, I just give her what she wants? An abortion joke. There. Hilarious, right? Does that help you normalize your preferred brand of massacre? Look on the bright side, folks. It's gotta be all uphill from here. Pretty sure we can't get any lower than that. Student protester hit by car as she blocked freeway sues UC San Diego. Okay, right. This one, I have to admit, my initial reaction was something like, what the fuck? How in the hell is the university responsible for you being a total dumbass and marching onto an active fucking freeway? Well, She starts with this. Flores, in her suit filed in late November, partly blames campus officials for her injury, arguing they should have stopped the protest before it got dangerous, according to news reports. Right. So the school didn't stop you, therefore it's their fault. Pretty fucking flimsy if you ask me. If I don't stop you from hanging yourself, I'm still not a murderer when you do it. But her lawyer goes a bit further, and this is where things get interesting to me. In an interview with The Guardian, Gene Sullivan, Flores' lawyer, asserted that the university planned, organized, and knew the protest was happening for hours and did nothing to stop it. According to Sullivan, not doing anything and failing to act is legally the same thing as supporting the protest, the newspaper reported. Sullivan further alleged that the protest was encouraged by people in positions of authority at the university, and that if anyone that is in authority with the university, a residential advisor, says, "let's go," the university would be responsible. Now that's interesting from a legal perspective, because if she wins this case, depending of course on the exact ruling, then there's all sorts of legal precedent here, much of which I don't think colleges are going to like. For starters, if this lawyer is correct, and I suspect he's not, but if he is, then that means the college is responsible for any protest organized by any campus representative. Why is that interesting to me? In a word, liability. The college becomes responsible for any crime committed during any protest organized or encouraged by any representative of that college. Think back to all those protests that resulted in assaults, property damage, etc. If this is upheld, then the floodgates are open. Anyone harmed by these protests, and really we should stop calling them protests because they're just riots, but the college itself becomes culpable for any injury or property damage. You see where I'm going with this? All it would take is for one video or email or flyer from some random TA or RA or a professor encouraging the protest, and bam! The college is now responsible for anything that happens during that protest. That's some serious risk given the propensity toward violent action we've seen from these idiots so far. And it doesn't stop there either. The complaint also lists the University of California Regents, the city and county of San Diego, the state of California, and the driver of the vehicle as defendants in the lawsuit. The college, the city, the county, and the entire state. She's literally blaming everyone else for this shit. Kind of why I expect this to be laughed right out of court, but imagine the implications if it isn't. You think the college, the city, the county, or state is going to allow anyone even remotely connected to them to support this shit if they become culpable for any damages as a result? Hell no! Ironically, perhaps, this little snowflake blaming everyone else could set the very precedent that brings all this shit to a screeching halt. I'm a bit torn here. On the one hand, I don't like the idea that she gets to blame literally everyone else for her own dumbass choice. But on the other hand, it could put an end to these universities pumping out retards too. I suspect it'll settle and not even go to court, which would be a bit of a bummer really, because this could have far-reaching implications. Keep an eye on how this one turns out. Could be interesting. Alright, Bob. Toxic masculinity time. Texas woman who had miscarriage stabbed friend to death, took infant, police say. A woman was arrested Thursday after she allegedly stabbed her friend to death in a Texas apartment and snatched her 6-week-old baby girl in an attempt to pass the child off as her own after suffering a miscarriage, police said. You can read the rest if you like, but that's the gist of it. She miscarried her own pregnancy, kept it a secret, killed her friend, stole the baby, and tried to pass it off as her own. Boy, men sure are toxic. I mean, feminists tell us aggression and violence are uniquely masculine traits. So I don't know which man is to blame for all this, but there must be one somewhere. Alright, Bob, give us something humorous to finish up with. Alcohol makes people more racist and homophobic. Alcohol lowers inhibitions. We've known this for a very long time. It doesn't make people racist and homophobic. It makes racists and homophobes more likely to display their racism and homophobia. There's a very big difference between those two statements. But what I found humorous is what's passing for research here. They interviewed 124 people attending accident and emergency with injuries from violence in 3 multicultural British cities. 124 people. Absolutely laughable sample size given the conclusion you're trying to draw from it. Of these, drunkenness accounted for 90%, while 23 victims considered themselves to have been attacked by people motivated by prejudice. 7 said their appearance was the motive, 5 claimed racial tensions within the community was to blame, 3 mentioned where they live, and 8 were attributed to race, religion, or sexual orientation of the victims. This was the funniest part to me. You didn't ask the perpetrators why they did it. You asked the victims why they think the perpetrators did it. Research! The findings suggest that hate crimes are more likely to be carried out when people are drunk. Duh. No research needed to figure that out. Again, lowers inhibitions. We've known that for a long time now. Professor Jonathan Shepard, director of the Cardiff University Crime and Security Research Institute, said, "A striking aspect of the study was the discovery that most attacks weren't fueled by hate alone. Alcohol appeared to act as an igniter. Our findings suggest that tackling alcohol abuse is not only important in regards to the health of individuals, but also the health of our society." So let's sum this up. You asked 124 victims why they think someone else did something, and from their speculations, you've concluded that we need to stop everyone from drinking. The fucking Puritans would be so proud. Alright folks, let me take just a minute here before we wrap up and apologize for the delay on the autobiography. I have been working on it. A little spoiler for you about me. I actually enjoy writing stories, which is both good and bad, I suppose. I tend to get lost in the story and get a bit carried away at times. I keep going back to cut things out, but at this point, I think I'm just going to have to surrender to my more natural writing style, or I'll never actually finish it. That means it's probably going to come out more like a novel, but I'm trying to keep it short. The first 5 chapters are already written and ready to record. I just need to settle on a presentation style, and that's proving a little more difficult than I imagined. I simply do not have the hardware or the software to do what I really would like to do, so I have to compromise my vision a little. Long story short, look for the first couple parts to start rolling out in the next few weeks or something. I don't know if you'll enjoy it or not, but do remember it's all fiction, my totally real history. I'll see you all next time.